The punch bowl was a sea of sugary red, and I was its lonely island. At our annual family reunion, the air buzzed with talk of promotions, new cars, and exotic vacations, conversations that always seemed to flow around me. I clutched my plastic cup, a fixed, polite smile on my face. Then Aunt Marjorie drifted over, her perfume a cloud of sharp flowers. She leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper meant only for me. "You still haven't done anything with your life, have you?" The words hung in the air, freezing the moment. I felt every eye nearby flick toward us. My smile tightened, my throat closed. I swallowed the hot sting of tears and managed a weak, "Excuse me," before turning away. But as I moved to escape, our host, Uncle Frank, clinked his glass. "Everyone, quiet. We have a surprise guest. Please welcome our mayor, Alex Thompson." The crowd murmured in pleasant shock. Then the mayor's voice cut through. "Thank you, Frank. I'm actually here tonight for one person in particular." He scanned the room, his gaze landing squarely on me. "We have a lot to thank you for, Alara." The mayor's voice faded into a memory from 10 years prior. I was 18, watching my cousins pack for Ivy League schools. I was supposed to go to state, to study urban planning. But then Mom got sick. It was just the two of us. So, I stayed. I became the family's unofficial caretaker, the one everyone could rely on to be there, and then forget about. My cousins, Ben and Sophia, sent postcards from their brilliant futures. I sent emails updating everyone on Mom's medication. Aunt Marjorie's comments were a constant soundtrack. "Such a waste of potential," she'd sigh, shaking her head at my job at the local diner. "You had such good grades." I learned to just nod, the dream of making a mark on the world slowly buried under a mountain of grocery lists and medical bills. I became the ghost at every family function, present but unseen, a footnote in my own life. One afternoon, after a particularly draining day, I found a crumpled flyer in our mailbox. It was for a city outreach program, something about community development. For a long moment, I just stared at it, a tiny, forgotten ember in my chest flickering to life. The letter was official, bearing the city's seal. It felt heavy in my hands, a secret weight. The Community Leadership Initiative was a 6-month training program for people who wanted to make a difference in their neighborhoods. I'd applied online late one night, my heart pounding as I clicked submit. I hadn't told a soul, not even Mom. What if I failed? What if they said no? It would just be another thing for Marjorie to pity. But the letter said yes. I was in. I remember holding it in my kitchen, the tremble in my hands not from fear, but from a wild, hopeful thrill. This was my chance, my tiny, secret rebellion against the narrative everyone had written for me. I hid the acceptance letter in an old recipe book, a talisman of a future I was determined to build. It was the first thing I had done just for me in years, a small seed planted in the dark, and I was going to nurture it with everything I had. Last year's reunion was the breaking point. I'd been running late from my shift and brought a store-bought apple pie. Aunt Marjorie took one bite and made a show of putting her fork down. "A shame," she announced to the table. "Some people just aren't cut out for success, even in the kitchen." The table had tittered with uncomfortable laughter. I'd fled to the bathroom, crying silent, hot tears of shame. That night, sitting alone in my tiny apartment, something in me snapped. I was done being the family's punching bag. I was done being silent. I opened my laptop, the blue light illuminating my determined face. I found the mayor's public email address, the one for constituent concerns. I took a deep breath and began typing, pouring all my frustration and my dreams for our neglected neighborhoods into the message. It was a bold, probably crazy proposal. I didn't expect a reply. I clicked send and felt a terrifying, exhilarating sense of freedom. Weeks passed with no response. I figured the email had been lost in a bureaucratic void. Then, one Saturday, I was volunteering at the community center, helping to sort book donations. A man in a simple button-down shirt started helping me. We got to talking about the neighborhood. I found myself telling him about my idea for the vacant lots on Willow Street, turning them into community gardens and a small playground. I spoke with a passion I didn't know I still had. He listened intently, not interrupting. When I finished, he smiled. That's one of the most well-thought-out ideas I've heard in a long time. He handed me a business card. I looked down. It read, Alex Thompson, Mayor. My jaw dropped. He laughed kindly. Write it up properly. A full proposal. Send it to my personal email. I'll read it myself. I worked like a woman possessed. After my shifts at the diner, I'd stay up until 2 a.m., writing grant proposals, drawing rough site plans, and researching zoning laws. I started spending my weekends on Willow Street, picking up trash and talking to neighbors. Slowly, people joined me. Mr. Henderson from number 24 brought his lawnmower. A group of teenagers started helping us clear the biggest lot. We became a team. A local reporter, doing a story on neighborhood efforts, came by. The following week, a small article appeared in the Herald with the headline, Local Woman Transforming Willow Street. There was a picture of me, covered in dirt, smiling next to our first planted garden box. I bought 10 copies, my hands shaking as I looked at the proof that I was, in fact, doing something. Back in the present, at the reunion, the mayor's shocking declaration hung in the air. But my mind flashed to the family group chat after that article came out. The link was shared by my cousin Ben with a laughing emoji. Aunt Marjorie's response was swift. Oh, so cleaning up trash now counts as a career? How quaint. I remember reading those words, feeling the old sting, but it was different this time. I had the taste of real accomplishment, and it was more potent than their scorn. I hadn't replied. I simply saved the screenshot. Now, standing frozen before the mayor and my stunned family, my phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it, but I knew. The gears I had set in motion were finally turning, and no one in this room was prepared for what was coming next. The buzzing phone was from the mayor's assistant. The day after the article, I'd been summoned to City Hall. Mayor Thompson offered me a formal position as a consultant on a new city council initiative, the Urban Renewal Project. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was real. This was big. What if I couldn't handle it? I'm not sure I'm qualified, I'd whispered. The mayor had leaned forward, his expression serious. Alara, you organized a dozen volunteers, secured a small grant from the local hardware store, and turned a dumping ground into a park. You've already done more than most people ever dream of. He slid a contract across the polished desk. I picked up the pen, my hand steady for the first time all day. I signed my name, Alara Moss, with a flourish. It was quiet, it was secret, and it was mine. When the reunion invitation arrived in the mail a month later, there was a handwritten note attached from Marjorie. Asterisk, do try to bring someone successful with you this time. It would be good for you. Asterisk, the old me would have crumpled it. The new me just smiled. I would go. But this year, I would go on my terms. I was no longer the girl hiding by the punch bowl. I had a plan. The very next day, I got a message from the mayor's office. The big grant came through. The announcement is scheduled for this weekend. We'd like to do it at a community-focused event. Any ideas? I typed back my reply, a slow smile spreading across my face. The reunion was this weekend. The morning of the reunion, I stood in front of my mirror. I wore a simple, elegant navy blue dress. It was modest, but it was mine, bought with the first paycheck from my city project. I practiced my breathing. I rehearsed calm, polite responses to their inevitable jabs. Asterisk, what have you been up to, Alara? Oh, a few local projects. Asterisk, my inner voice was a mix of nerves and steely confidence. They were going to see a version of me they never expected. In my purse was a letter I'd received just yesterday. My Willow Creek project had won a statewide Community Impact Award. I hadn't told anyone. Some surprises are best saved for the right moment. This secret felt like armor. The reunion was in full swing at Uncle Frank's spacious backyard. The air was thick with boasts and gossip. My cousin Sophia was holding court, detailing her recent promotion to senior vice president. "The corner office is simply massive," she trilled. Aunt Marjorie raised her glass. "A toast to the achievers in our family." Glasses clinked. I stood slightly apart, a serene smile on my face, simply observing the spectacle. I didn't need to brag. My work spoke for itself, even if they didn't know it yet. I saw Uncle Frank get a text, his eyes widening. He hurried toward the gate. A moment later, a sleek, black town car I recognized all too well pulled into the driveway. The mayor had arrived. Aunt Marjorie, sensing my isolation, swooped in for the kill. She patted my arm, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Don't worry, dear. Not everyone is meant for big things. Some of us are just background players." She leaned in, her whisper as sharp as a knife. "You still haven't done anything with your life, have you?" This time, the words didn't freeze me. They ignited me. I opened my mouth to finally, firmly respond. But before a single syllable could leave my lips, Mayor Thompson walked straight up to our little group. He completely ignored a gaping Marjorie and clasped my hand warmly. "Elara. So glad I found you. Ready for our little announcement?" The smug smile melted from Marjorie's face, replaced by utter, bewildered confusion. Mayor Thompson turned to address the entire family, who had fallen into a stunned silence. "I hope you'll all pardon the interruption," he began, his voice projecting easily across the yard. "But I couldn't pass up the chance to thank one of your own in person. Elara here is the driving force behind the city's most successful community renewal project in a decade." He explained how my proposal had brought in millions in state grants, revitalizing entire blocks and creating hundreds of local jobs. I saw my relatives' faces shift from confusion to shock. "Her work hasn't gone unnoticed," the mayor continued. "Which is why it is my great pleasure to announce that next week, Elara Moss will be officially sworn in as the Deputy Director of Community Development for our city." You could have heard a pin drop. The only sound was the faint clink of ice in Aunt Marjorie's glass, her hand was trembling so badly. I simply smiled, my heart pounding a joyful rhythm in my chest. "Thank you, Alex." "It's an honor," I said, my voice clear and steady. The mayor grinned, then gestured around us. "And the real kicker? This lovely neighborhood, this very house, sits in one of the first zones Elara helped to redevelop. Your property values? You have her to thank for that significant bump." Now the silence was broken by a collective, sharp intake of breath. They were living in, and benefiting directly from, the success they had just mocked. As the mayor said his goodbyes, the spell broke. A tidal wave of family members surged toward me. Cousin Ben was suddenly asking for investment advice. Sophia wanted to know if the city needed a corporate liaison. Aunt Marjorie stood alone, trying to salvage her dignity. "Well, it's just politics, isn't it? A fancy title for picking up trash." But no one was listening to her anymore. They were all talking to me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from the mayor. "Great job in there. Ready for the press conference tomorrow? The governor might attend." I looked up from my phone, meeting Marjorie's furious gaze across the crowd. The game had completely changed. Later, as the party dwindled, Marjorie cornered me near the rose bushes, her face a mask of tight anger. "You," she hissed. "You planned this. You made me look like a complete fool in front of everyone." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and felt not anger, but a deep, profound pity. "No, Aunt Marjorie," I said, my voice calm. "You did that all by yourself. I just finally stopped providing an audience for it." Her eyes widened in shock at my directness. This wasn't the meek, compliant niece she was used to. She leaned in, her voice a low, threatening whisper. "You think you're so clever? I know all about your past. Your failures. Don't think I won't remind everyone. True to her word, Marjorie launched her counterattack. She called a reporter at the Herald, the same one who had written the positive piece about me. She spun a wild story about how I had taken credit for work done by others, how I was a fraud who had manipulated the mayor. She was trying to smear the one thing I had built for myself. I got a call from a nervous-sounding intern at the mayor's office, asking if I had a comment on the allegations being leveled by my aunt. My stomach churned. This was exactly what I had always feared. But an hour later, my phone chimed. It was an email from Mayor Thompson. He had forwarded the reporter's inquiry to him. His only added comment was, "Already handled it. Don't worry." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The next day, the Herald didn't run a story about me. Instead, a bombshell exposé landed on the front page. The headline read, "Family Charity Fund Director Accused of Siphoning Thousands." The article detailed how Marjorie, as the longtime treasurer of our family's own charitable foundation, had been quietly funneling money for years to pay for her lavish lifestyle, the vacations, the car, the designer bags. I hadn't leaked a thing. The reporter, suspicious of Marjorie's motives for attacking me, had started digging into her background. He found the truth all on his own. Karma, it seemed, had a byline. By lunchtime, Marjorie's name was trending all over local social media, and it wasn't for anything good. The fallout was swift and brutal. The family group chat exploded with fury and betrayal. Marjorie was removed as treasurer immediately. My phone rang incessantly with relatives apologizing for not believing in me and condemning Marjorie's actions. The final blow came when my Uncle Frank, the reunion host, called me. "Alara," he said, his voice thick with shame. "The planning committee for next year's reunion, well, we were wondering if you would consider hosting it?" The irony was almost too much. The person they'd always seen as a failure was now being asked to hold their most cherished family tradition. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't host it at a fancy house. I invited my entire family to the grand opening of my newest project, the renovated Northwood Youth Center. They walked through the bright, clean halls, saw the new computer lab, the art room covered in vibrant murals painted by local kids. They saw the impact of my work not in a newspaper article, but in the laughing faces of the children playing basketball in the gym. The abstract concept of my success became real, tangible. It was a quiet, powerful vindication. As my family mingled, looking genuinely impressed, I saw my father standing by the entrance, watching me. He looked older, and his eyes were filled with tears. He approached me hesitantly, wringing his hands. "Alara, his voice broke. For all these years, I listened to Marjorie. I believed her when she said you were stuck. A failure. I am so sorry." He cried then, quiet, ashamed tears. "I was so proud of your cousins, I didn't see the amazing woman my own daughter had become." It was the apology I had waited my whole life to hear. The little girl inside me who just wanted her dad's approval finally felt seen. He looked around the bustling center, a place of hope and second chances. Is there anything I can do? Can I help? Maybe volunteer here sometime?" A month later, I stood at a podium before a crowd of reporters and community leaders, accepting the statewide leadership award. "People often talk about potential," I said into the microphones. "But they rarely talk about the people who teach you resilience through rejection. The ones who show you what you don't want to become." For that, in a strange way, I am also grateful. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. I glanced directly into the camera of the local news station, knowing my family, and one aunt in particular, would be watching. My words were not of triumph, but of quiet, unshakable strength. The day after the award ceremony, Marjorie showed up at my City Hall office. She looked disheveled, a ghost of her formerly polished self. The charity investigation was moving forward, her friends had abandoned her. "Alara, please," she begged, her voice trembling. "You have to help me. You have influence now. Tell them I didn't mean it. Tell them it was a mistake." She was desperate, pathetic. I looked at this woman who had caused me so much pain, who had defined so much of my life by her criticism. I remembered every whispered insult, every condescending smile. I paused, taking in her utter downfall. And then, I smiled softly. "I will help you, Aunt Marjorie," I said calmly. Her face lit up with desperate hope. "But not by making this go away. I'll help you if it means you finally do something honest." I picked up my phone and called the director of the city's financial literacy and restitution program. "I have someone here who needs to learn about accountability and rebuilding." I looked back at her. "It's a community service program. You'll work with people you once looked down on, and you'll learn how to truly contribute. This isn't revenge. It's your chance for redemption, if you're humble enough to take it." The next family reunion was held at the Northwood Youth Center. The sound of children's laughter was our music. My family mingled proudly, now telling stories about my niece, the deputy director. Mayor Thompson was there, playing chess with one of the kids. In a quiet corner, Aunt Marjorie, now halfway through her community service, approached me. "Thank you, Alara," she whispered, her voice raw with a new humility. For being the bigger person." I placed a hand on her arm. "We all rebuild, one way or another," I said. As she walked away, I turned to look at the main wall of the center. There, a simple brass plaque gleamed, engraved with the words I had chosen myself, *Alara Moss, proof that grace is stronger than pride. And for the first time, I felt my life was truly, completely, my own.